NG Models has built a reputation for excellence in the die-cast aircraft community. From crisp printing to stunning molds, they became the gold standard in 1:400 scale. But over the past few years, a shift has left US collectors wondering these two questions. Where are the American models, and has NG turned away from the market that helped launch their success? Let's take a look and see if and how NG has changed their release strategy that negatively affects collectors from the United States. Starting in 2018, NG launched with 78 releases, with 22 of those models were from one of the biggest markets in the hobby, the United States. This helped NG solidify their reputation among American collectors in just their first year of operation. Highlights during this year include several Northwest Boeing 757 hybrids, Delta, Continental, and United Boeing 757-200s, and an American CRJ-200 and 1/200 scale for good measure. By 2019, it really ramped up, as NG did a total of 157 releases. 35 of those were US aircraft and 13 from Mexico and Canada. North America remained a major focus, with Europe holding a strong lead. With the introduction of new molds like the Lockheed L-1011 TriStar, Boeing 737-800, and Airbus A330-200, this enabled NG to expand their offerings. In the US, airlines like US Airways, Eastern, and Canadian's WestJet would be more prominent. Reception towards NG also steadily increased as more collectors had more reason to buy their products rather than the competing brands. It's also worth noting that very popular offerings like the United Airlines 737-800 Evo Blue and American Airlines 757, among other very popular aircraft, came out during this time. These were aircraft that collectors were really looking for, especially with the very prominent mold. In 2020, NG released 153 models, holding steady with 37 US releases. Chinese models, however, began creeping in, 20 in that year, a hint of what's to come. Previously, NG has released 22 Chinese models in 2018 and 19 in 2019. This lower number from their home country allowed for a wider array of regions to be represented. Despite the minor changes, NG still held strong in releasing popular US aircraft this year, like the Her Art Here United 757s, Sun Country 737 in Tide Pod livery, Southwest Canyon Blue 737-800, Alaska 737-800, Hawaiian A330, and this list goes on, as this was a very memorable time for collectors during the pandemic. Additional new molds like the Airbus A321 and Airbus A350-900 further helped NG release new airlines that brands like Gemini jets were already doing, like JetBlue and Delta. But obviously, as we know, the difference was the pristine and precise molds that NG models had. By 2021, we had a turning point. NG released 132 models that year, but US aircraft dropped to just 29, Chinese held steady at 20 releases, and the rest were Asia saw a jump to 36. Combined with the new 20 Chinese releases, this year marked the first time Asia collectivity overtook North America in representation. However, most collectors didn't see it as much of a problem, as NG was still doing a fair balance of models from other regions, but as they continued to grow, NG's release sizes were soon to follow. Then came 2022. NG expanded their catalog to 225 releases this year, but despite this, the US only sold 51 models, a modest jump from what was the big year for the manufacturer. Meanwhile, China grew to 33 releases, and the rest from Asia reached 50, leading to 83 total releases from Asia. The continent of Europe still led the individual categories with 64 releases. Now it was becoming clear to collectors, NG's focus was starting to shift eastward, and at this stage, NG was still benefiting US collectors with great releases, such as Southwest 737s, American aircraft, TWA, Alaska, and many others. In 2023, NG made their most models in a single year with 354. While this jump might imply that an increase of all regions around the world would be found, the imbalance between US aircraft and Chinese aircraft further increased. Another modest increase for US aircraft occurred with 55, while Chinese models jumped ahead to 64, the first time China alone surpassed the releases from the United States. The rest of Asia saw 91 releases, which combines for about 44% of the releases this year. In prior years, 2018 saw 30% of the releases from Asia, while 2019 dropped to 22%. 2020 was at 33%, 2021 was at 42%, and 2022 was at 37%. Certainly some very interesting figures in the percentage scale. With all this considered, 2024 brought more of the same. NG stayed with the large releases and thus announced a total of 315 aircraft. only 64 came from the US, with 93 from China and another 61 from a broader Asia region. Europe saw 45 releases, and North America's total was just 76. Collectors were starting to take serious notice of the imbalance, as now 49% of the releases were from all of Asia. There was a brief moment of hope in September of 2024, as it brought 3 highly anticipated US models, including the American Airlines Boeing 737 MAX 8, United Airlines Boeing 737 MAX 8, and a Southwest Triple Crown 1 Boeing 737-800. It felt like NG was finally listening. It brought back hope to collectors just for a balance. Unfortunately, that momentum didn't last. February 2025 offered just a Delta A330 re-release, for example, a model we've seen before. Then in May of 2025, what I would consider to be one that was pretty disappointing considering that this was supposed to be a big time for NG here in the summer, NG dropped just one single US model, a JetBlue A321. While a very tropical aircraft with a new Blue Unity special livery, having just one US aircraft out of 30 plus that month is just not a good look. Even when there's a flicker of attention, it fades fast. Consistency remains the missing piece. As of May of 2025, NG has released 120 models this year. Just 19 of those are releases from the US, which is the pace that they're on right now, means that they would have a huge drop by year's end. 43 releases from China and the rest from Asia at 38, now marking 68% of the share and releases from this part of the world to this point. Other regions like Europe, Oceania, and Africa are seeing minimal representation at best. So when it comes to US releases that are few and far between, it affects more than just the variety. It hurts the momentum in the hobby. Furthermore, it has allowed other manufacturers like Gemini Jets to catch back up to NG. Despite having products that may not be to the same standard, some collectors have started to purchase models from them alongside other brands instead of waiting on NG. It used to be an effective strategy to do so, but with their unrivaled ability to release certain subjects, I would really consider what you do when you're collecting. One major example of this is the Southwest 737-800 Nevada 1 livery that Gemini Jets did over a year ago. I decided to go ahead and buy this model, and I had quite a bit of discussion with other collectors as to whether I should or not, possibly waiting on the NG. Well, I went ahead and did it, and I'm glad I did, as NG has still not done that aircraft. That's one of many examples that we can use here to furthermore extend the point of you have to really be mindful of when and what you're buying, because you may miss out on your chance, as the Nevada 1 aircraft isn't hard to find, but it also takes some effort to get it. So you certainly have to be mindful of what you're collecting at this point. It is always an option to resell aircraft, and that's exactly what I'll do if NG Models releases Nevada 1, for example, or another aircraft that I already have. But of course, time will tell. While these changes are affecting the balances of the releases, there is an explanation to this, you would think. The main reason that I see is that NG Models is based out of China. A large collecting community does exist there, and there is a plethora of Chinese airlines to choose from. NG has been catering more to these collectors. While there's been some pushback from these collectors due to them being a newer player in the hobby, it seems as it's worked out and may at least partially explain the shift away from the strategy we've came to know. So it's fair for NG to cater to these collectors, but at the same time, it hasn't been clear to collectors from other regions around the world to take a backseat while endlessly waiting for certain models. I also have 2 remarks here from collectors regarding their perspectives, so let's go ahead and take a look at these. Quote, I remember jumping ship to NG in 2019 when they released their first Sun Country 737. Their models were what I wanted at that time, high quality and not broken at all. As time passed, NG continued to show how much they cared for markets like the United States and Europe, still releasing many popular subjects and more from across the world. Now seeing NG's release strategy shift towards a domestic Chinese focus is disappointing to anybody outside China. I've even witnessed people who love NG simply complain about their sharp contrast in release choices from even 2023 to now. So that's telling me that they're doing something wrong for many Western collectors. As a result, I've decided to change my perspective on model collecting, and now I'm willing to wait for whoever makes a model that I want regardless of the quality, most notably the MD-80s. I used to wait for NG on certain models, but now they're so unreliable with particular subjects that that's just not worth the wait anymore. Furthermore, I was excited when they started making McDonnell Douglas MD-80s, but the fact that they've only done American, 1 TWA hybrid, and a Delta release for US collectors is hugely disappointing. There's so many airlines out there that they could be doing, and they could have allowed Gemini Jets to take advantage of this to make airlines NG aren't doing. Overall, I want them to change because they still like their products, but if they don't release stuff I want, then they just don't get business from me. End quote. Collector 2 said, quote, my first 1-400 model was an NG American 757 flagship Freedom. I can't afford to buy too many models all at once very frequently, so I didn't end up collecting many NGs. They ultimately weren't producing a lot of what I wanted, so I mainly bought from other brands in older releases. It's unfortunate what's happening with NG shifting away from US releases, however, this is a time for other companies to make up for the lack of NGs. It's just another phase of the modeling scene. It will always be changing, and we'll just have to see what results next. If you're not a collector from the US, why does this matter so much? To start, US collectors build US airports. From Los Angeles to Chicago, New York John F. Kennedy, Dallas Love Field, US fleets dominate layouts and diorama builds across the community, and we are definitely loyal. When NG drops a strong US model, it will sell well and it will sell fast. Models like the American MD-80s were strong sellers, so much so that NG released many batches to keep up with the demand. NG already has the assets, the molds, the demand, and the audience. US collectors aren't asking for domination like how Gemini Jet structures their releases, but we just want equal footing, a balanced monthly lineup, consistency among domestic coverage, plus other collectors from regions have the same demand. Imagine 3 to 5 high quality US releases every month, like a United A321neo, Southwest 737 MAX 8, Alaska 737 MAX 9, Frontier Airbus A321neo. Us US collectors would be all over these, and there's been some that have been long awaited. Frontier Airlines was suggested to them all the way back to 2020, and NG has took no action besides promising that releases would come out in 2021. That was almost 5 years ago now. Only A318s have been released, and quite frankly, those don't really help model airport builders in the current era. So the real question, has NG abandoned US collectors? I wouldn't say completely, but the data does not lie. US representation has dropped substantially. China now dominates the monthly lineups, and a few of the American models we get are often afterthoughts, re-releases, or just simply aircraft that have been done or is not as popular. Fortunately, it's not too late. NG still has time to counteract. They've shown us with the September 2024 releases that they're capable of giving US collectors what they want even at a sample. They just need to keep up with that momentum. So, what US aircraft are you wanting to see from NG? Definitely drop your wish list in the comments below. And before I end this video, I definitely want to make a major note that's not just about us US collectors. It includes Europe, it includes Africa, it includes Australia, it includes South America. There are so many regions that NG simply is not covering very much, if not at all. We've mentioned several of these examples, and I certainly hope to see this improve. NG by far has one of the best hard products in the 1 to 400 and 1 to 200 scale. So we certainly would like to see that coincide with good releases, because what do good molds matter if you don't have good releases? I certainly respect all of the Asia aircraft that they've done, whether Chinese or not. That's obviously a big spoke for them, and it's a huge part of their operation and obviously where they're from, as we've discussed. That said, I certainly think it would be wrong of them to abandon the strategy of catering to large markets around the world like the United States, Europe, and so many regions around the world. But anyway, feel free to let me know what you think in the comments below. Definitely drop me your wish list, and let me know if you agree if it's time for NG to return to their American roots and other regions around the world as well. Feel free to share this video if you enjoyed it, and with that being said, that'll do it for today's video. Thank you all so much for watching. My name's CM Aviation. Just stay safe, trust the process, do what you love and love you do. My name's CM Aviation. I want to thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all soon as CM Aviation is signing off.